Secret midnight flights, plane loads of migrant children being flown into suburban New York, according to the New York Post. Fox's Peter Doocy pressed White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki earlier today about these trips. Listen to her answer.
Why is the administration flying thousands of migrants from the border to Florida and New York in the middle of the night?
Well, I'm not sure that it's in the middle of the night, but let me tell you what's happening here.
2:30 a.m., 4:29 a.m.
Well,
very early in the morning.
Here we are talking about early flights, earlier than you might like to take a flight. In recent weeks, unaccompanied children passed through the Westchester Airport, which I think is what you're referring to, en route to their final destination to be unified with their parents or vetted sponsor.
Kind of making a joke of the whole thing at first. Here now is Tom Homan. He's former acting ICE director and Fox Business contributor. I can tell from your face you're not pleased by her attempt at joking there, Tom. Two planes arrived. I mean, let's just be specific. Two planes arrived in the darkness that were charted by the New York Post. One at 2:13 a.m., the other at 4:29 a.m. They were moved on to a bus that went on the Hutchinson Parkway, which is supposed to have bus travel be illegal. This was at 2 or 3 in the morning. They were traveling at 75 miles an hour in a bus on the Hutchinson Parkway, which is a small, relative small highway. This was being done for secretive purposes. Why?
Because the Biden administration does not want to have the optics that there's a crisis. For the same reason they stopped the Fox drone that saw the Haitians on the bridge until that got overruled. The Biden administration has lied about this issue from the very beginning. The Secretary of Homeland Security was on the Hill today under oath, committing perjury, saying the border is secure. But let's get something clear. These flights have been going on since early February, and they're just not in New York. They're flying these children everywhere. The more serious question that should have been asked to Jen Psaki is, where are they going specifically, and how did you vet the people these children be released to? That's the biggest issue. I can tell you right now, what I know, they're vetting them at a very little clearance level, nowhere near what the Trump administration. We vetted a sponsor. We vetted the sponsor and anybody that lived in that household. Now, because this administration is concentrating on releasing people a lot quicker, so it doesn't appear to be a crisis, the vetting has been dropped by about 80%. And the second question should have been, okay, if your vetting's that good, why have you lost track of 1/3 of the children? 120,000 released, you've lost track of 40,000. So apparently that vetting isn't very good. Where are these children? Are they in danger? Did this administration put them in the hands of bad people?
How can you claim to be humanitarian and lose 40,000 children?
The same way they claim there's not a crisis. They lie. And I've said this many times. Look, I've never seen a Secretary of Homeland Security go to Congress under oath and commit perjury and get away with it. I mean, you've seen the videos. I've seen the video. 400,000 gotaways. That's not a secure border. 600,000 releases by this administration, many with COVID. That's not a secure border. Yeah. Enough fentanyl to kill 92,000 young children in this country. That is not a secure border. This administration constantly lying to the American people.
By the way, some Westchester officials got wind of all this going on. They're the ones that contacted the New York Post, gave them information about the airport. They're really ticked off because Westchester has these COVID restrictions that all of these flights and the people getting off and on the plane and traveling and so forth violated these restrictions that Westchester had. Again, Jen Psaki said it. What's right for U.S. citizens or what U.S. citizens can't do, these illegal immigrants can do. They have more rights than U.S. citizens.
Absolutely. Border Patrol agents are going to be fired if they don't get vaccinated. However, they're arresting and releasing thousands of people with COVID who haven't, and if they don't have COVID, they're not being tested, they're not being vaccinated. But the Border Patrol agents who are standing on the front line, put in harm's way, they'll lose their jobs if they're not vaccinated. What I would say to this county, every other county, if you see something, get it out to the media. We got to pull the curtain back on this administration because their actions do not match the rhetoric and the false narrative they're pushing to the American people.
What does all this say to the human smugglers? I'm told that they're making about $400 million a month right now with the human smuggling. That's equal to or greater than what they're getting from drug smuggling. To me, it almost seems like they've got partners in the Biden administration.
No one celebrated this election more than the criminal cartels in Mexico. They're back in business. And look, I'll say it, I've said it before. We got the first president in the history of this nation that's actively facilitating human trafficking and alien smuggling into this country. He's facilitating cross-border crime. We got a Secretary of Homeland Security who has done everything he can to unsecure the border. Same as the president. They got handed the most secure border in this nation's history, and they purposely unsecured it. The president and the Secretary of Homeland Security. It doesn't get worse than that.
Now, one of these buses, by the way, was tearing down the Hutchinson Parkway, stopped at a facility, one of these gas and service stops. The people got off the bus. This is according to the New York Post reporters. They got off the bus and were transferred into cars without any papers, anybody signing anything, anybody checking anybody's ID. What was that all about? I mean, what's going on here in terms of these transfer of these individuals to whomever?
What's going on is what I just explained to you. I think they've already said they've lost track of 1/3 of the children. Yeah, I'm just extrapolating the number. They released 120,000, so they lost track of 40,000.
But are they releasing, forgive me, Tom, are they releasing these children to the parents or to people representing some family members or what? Or is it worse than that?
We don't know. That's the problem. The secretary's been asked numerous times how many you've released and who you're releasing to. He has failed to give that information to them. Look, this scares the hell out of me because I can tell you some of these children are going to end up victims of trafficking, victims of sex trafficking, and this administration has failed to protect these children. This is not a humane policy at all. This is far worse than anything they claim the Trump administration has ever done.
Tom, we only got about 20 seconds, but Mercy First is the nonprofit organization that's been working with the Biden administration to transfer some of these people. Do you know anything about that group or why they wouldn't speak? The New York Post tried to get them on the record to talk about this. They wouldn't speak to the Post. Do you know why?
No, I don't. But look, if you're taking taxpayer dollars, you have a responsibility to answer the questions for the media. The taxpayers of the United States have a right to know what are you doing with our money and how are you operating.
Tom Homan, good to see you, Tom. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Good to see you. Bye-bye.